Okay. So before we proceed with this webinar, I request all the participants of this webinar to please use the chat and Q&A sections to ask any queries during the Q&A series. A warm welcome to all the participants of this interesting webinar on the death of automation by Andrew Fullen. So here's a quick introduction about Andrew. Andrew is the head of technology and innovation for Sogeti UK, joining the group back in 2009. In this role, he has worked with major clients across government and private sectors. And he joined UK in 2009, and he's been a very active member of Sogeti Labs and is also the country lead for UK. He is an enthusiastic speaker at events and commentator on using technology for the benefits of business and has a special interest in AI, automation, and agile or DevOps. In the UK, he leads the technical practice, working with our staff to ensure they have the skills to be successful in modern and changing world. He also works with sales and customers to understand their business needs and to craft technical solutions that develop real measurable value to them. So over to you, Andrew, to take us through this interesting webinar on the death of automation.
Thank you so much, Deepika, and thank you everyone for making the time to either join this live or to listen on the repeat. So I would like to clarify one little point before we start. I'm not actually responsible for the death of automation. I'm talking about it. I haven't actually killed it, although there have been a few times in the past when I felt like killing it. So hopefully you're going to be seeing just a completely black screen at the moment. I want to sort of set the scene for this sort of webinar, which is, automation's dead and we killed it. And what are we going to do about it? So there's a phrase from a popular TV show, winter is coming. For those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, it's actually quite warm and sunny in the UK today, so it doesn't feel like winter. But I do feel that we do have some of these guys lurking in the background, the White Walkers from Game of Thrones. They're out to kill testing. And this came about from thinking about the fact that I've been in Sogeti 10 years, and it's over 25 years since I did my first automation project for a financial software house. And there's a lot of things that I've heard, a lot of negatives. And every few years we get a burst of enthusiasm for automation, followed by well, automation isn't doing a great job. There's lots of problems with it. We don't get what we want to see from it. And I call that the death of automation. It's the death that we get from lots of feedback from colleagues, even from ourselves, from customers, from people in the industry. There's always a new tool being launched, and it's always killing the ones that were before it. So I'd like to start off with a sort of a happy, cheerful face of an automation tester who's been in the ground for a number of years. A last poor tester, I knew him Horatio, to badly paraphrase William Shakespeare. Now, we've had automation easily 25 years, probably a bit longer, but that's about as far back as I can go reliably for any sort of history on what we've done, other than small sort of fragments here and there. And we have the same messages all of the time. We have the same conversations now with customers that we were having 25 years ago, where we talk about how automation is going to make things better, how it's going to improve things, how it's going to save money. And yet we're still having those conversations now. That's not a good place to be in as an industry, that we keep having the same conversation. There's hundreds of tools out there. Every single week I get 3, 4, 5 emails launching the new all singing, all dancing automation solution. And the worst case scenario is that it appears in an in-flight magazine in business class on a transatlantic flight, because then some CTO, C-level executive sees it, believes it's the new thing, and the next thing we have to do is, why are you still using Eggplant, Selenium, UFT, Tosca? All of those sort of questions come up because they've seen this new tool that claims it solves all of the problems, that it has a framework, that it uses keywords, that it does everything. It washes the car, takes the kids to school for you, and it makes automation a thing of beauty. And again, it's a confusing message for everybody. They hear that message of hundreds of tools and they go, too much information, can't cope. And then there's the problem of cost. And I'm going to deliberately point at Selenium for this one. Selenium's done a great job of convincing everybody that automation is free, and it's not. There's always a cost involved, be it time, complexity, upskilling. There are many forms of different cost. It's not always about money, but it should be. There should be a financial reason why you choose a tool, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that it's cheap. But cost is one of the deal breakers I keep hearing about when I'm talking with people. It's, oh, this is going to cost me some money to do this? Oh, I'm not interested then. I thought it would be free. Bad place to be when you want to try and sell tools and the services when people think that free is overpriced. And yet, that seems to be a message that we get an awful lot when talking to people. And then there's the return on the investment. So how do you even calculate the return on investment on something that was free or relatively low cost? And I've seen presentations, not from ourselves, but from a large company that begins with an A, where they've actually gone in and said, this will pay for itself in just 2 years, and it will give me £50,000. I guarantee that you'll get 10,000 of that back. That's not a return on investment. That's 40k down the pipe. And we've been very bad as an industry of being able to talk about return of investment in a way that is meaningful to the budget cycles, to the way that people actually organize their budgets, the way they balance the books in organizations. We're going to tell them it's going to take 2 years to see a break even on a tool. That's too long for most corporate cycles. And yet I still see proposals, I still see reference cards from the vendors, from other organizations, where they call out 2 years, 3 years, 4 years to pay back on this one or two tools that you're buying. Again, that's the sort of thing that kills automation dead in organizations. Technical debt. I've been asked recently to look at a system from the early 80s. Let's automate it, it'll be more efficient. But why? The system's been running all of that time. It's not behaved badly, but automation has been misapplied to something with a really non-standard use case. And we spend a lot of time, and I've done it myself, where we're focusing in on solving the technical challenge about some old legacy system. If it's old, if it's broken, if it's inherited, why are we even trying to put automation into there? Let's focus in on the things where we can see real sort of cost returns, return on investments. Stop trying to fix broken systems. An ICL mainframe from the 1980s is not an ideal thing for Selenium to be targeted at, but that's an ask. Again, that kills the confidence in automation. We've set a challenge. You failed to solve the problem of this 8-bit legacy mainframe computer. Therefore, automation is bad. Time to actually getting anything to market. That's driving us all of the time. Waterfall projects, for the most part, seem to have disappeared from where I am in London. See very, very few waterfall projects. Everybody says they're agile, they're working in sprints. They might have a 3-month sprint, but they believe that they've got a much faster cycle than they used to have. But putting automation into a situation where we've got that fast time to market, when you've got a 3-week sprint, 2-week sprint, 1-week sprint, comes quite a challenge to be able to do that in a way that people can see the payoff. They can see the benefit of someone manually testing, they can see the benefit of a code change, but getting automation set up, getting the frameworks up, doesn't sit very well in the time to market that people are focusing in on. And we're talking about agile, DevOps, velocity, all of the time to customers as an industry. So they've got the message faster, faster, faster. And now we're going, well, yeah, but it's going to be 6 months, 3 months, get it all set up, work out what we need to automate. That, again, kills automation. And then there's the complexity. We spend a lot of time solving, as an industry again, complex programming problems and business problems by pointing automation at them. I think that automation would have been a lot better targeted at the simple stuff, the boring stuff, the repetitive stuff, in the same way that RPA has done. And RPA is going to eat automation's breakfast, if you're familiar with that phrase, over the complexity issue. They target a lot more simple business processes. They automate that. We instead go for, let's put in lots of error correction. Let's handle all of these exceptions. What happens if we don't have this data? And we effectively build parallel infrastructures to development to the systems that we're actually testing. It should have been a supporting scaffolding, something that enabled us to do our jobs. And at the end, we could take the scaffolding away. Instead, there's so much complexity that we spend 1 day a week, 2 days a week, sometimes even 3 days a week, maintaining the systems that we've got, or we've inherited them from another organization that we've replaced. Complexity kills productivity, it kills efficiency, it kills the things that automation is good at, which is doing things repetitively. Leave the humans to solve the difficult, challenging things and not the automation. And in turn, one of the things that I hear lots of times, especially from people who've been in the industry a long time, is that there's a whole trail of broken promises about automation. When I look back 25 years ago from when I sat down, I think it was QA Robot in a very, very early version. It was going to solve so many of our problems. We put a team on it. And, well, guess what? We had a team that did all of the automation. We now had to hire more people to replace them to do the manual testing. And the industry has a long memory. It remembers that things haven't happened. And we start using the same messaging, the same conversations with them. And they'll remember those broken promises. When you add all of these things together, the 25 years, the cost, the complexity, we start getting into a situation where a broken promise, yeah, it pretty much does seem to be the situation. And that's killing automation. In fact, I'll even go as far to say that automation really is dead in its current form. And that's really it. You know, we've killed it. So what do we do about it? It's not really the end of the presentation. What I want to do now is look at those messages, look at the feedback that we've had, and how we can actually take these and make them into strengths. It's not really the end, as the screen should say. I think there are some real positives about all of these sort of questions and challenges that we get, and we can take these and make them strong selling things rather than being negatives. We turn them into strengths. So let's have a look at our automation tester again. Let's have a look at the 25 years of automation. You know what? We've learned an awful lot in those 25 years, in the 30 years that we've had automation tools. We've gone from very simple click macros that play back things to things that are programmatically very, very complicated, that can plug into AIs, that can work out their own paths through the testing and respond to the errors that they see. We've had 25 years of development. Look back 25 years, COBOL was out there as a dominant language. Java was new on the block. Now Java's regarded in some areas as a legacy language. But we've had 25 years to learn, to develop, work out what's best. Sometimes it's been organic. Yes, we've made mistakes, but we've learned from them. Every iteration that we've been involved in has picked up a new improvement, a new change, a new way of doing something, another lesson that we've seen somewhere else that can be applied for this customer or for that particular problem. Hundreds of tools isn't a vice, it's a great strength. If there's a particular niche area, particular type of organization, structure, skills, chances are there is the right tool for it. No point using a flat-headed screwdriver to try and do a Phillips screw. Get a Phillips screwdriver, the 4-angled ones, put that in, use the right tool for the job. It works better in the long run, it causes less damage, you're more productive. And that's what we need to understand about the toolscape. There is a lot more tools out there. Some of them will wither and die, and some of them will keep on developing and develop and develop and develop. Selenium has kept on going. UFT has gone through multiple changes of owner, several product names, and yet the core people developing it are still involved in it. Other tools we've seen develop, Tricentis' Tosca started off as a very simple tool and now has expanded out into the SAP space as a really key player, certainly for the solutions that we're building. So that hundreds of tools is a great thing. There are very few monopoly situations, and when they are, they tend to be detrimental to the industry, to innovation. Hundreds of tools means that there's new stuff coming, that it keeps everybody hungry on their toes, watching what everyone else is doing, and borrowing the best bits. Cost. There's no getting away from cost, but you have to maybe change the conversation from cost to what's the value they actually get from this. If you can go live one day a week faster, 1 hour faster than your competitors because of automation, that's a key advantage. You cut down the number of defects reaching live by just a small amount, that's less customers you lose. Sticky customers are good for your bottom line. It costs you a lot less to keep a customer than it does to get a new one. So don't worry about the cost of the tool, talk about the value that they bring. And I've started to see this as a shift in a number of the tooling companies. They're not talking now about just what the baseline cost is, but what the business value is, what the business benefit is, what you gain from doing it, and not about the pounds, euros, dollars price. Return on investment. Do we measure that simply by we reduce the number of manual testers and replace them with more expensive automators? Or do we start talking about the benefit it brings to the business, about getting more features through, about being able to turn around a build faster? And I saw a great example probably about 20 years ago of automation done really well, where they could turn around from the developer committing the code to it rolling out globally to hundreds of millions of users within 30 minutes due to large-scale automation that they trusted. And that was a significant competitive advantage for that organization. They didn't care that it cost them 1 million, 2 million, 3 million a year, because they knew what the benefit was to their bottom line as a global organization, which was close to $1 billion of software sales. So in that situation, meaning they didn't lose people to their rivals, meaning that they could work out what it costed them, they were less concerned about the tool cost and more about the benefit that it brought, the return on investment into IT, not into the particular tool, into what they were able to deliver. Technical debt. Sometimes we're going to have to say, no, that system's too old, too complicated, too broken, too legacy. Let's focus on the good stuff. Let's focus on the new systems that are being developed, on the ones where automation can generate the biggest benefit, where we can actually show that it saves time in development, in support, in reduced defect leakage into live. Stay away from the old nightmare ones. Yes, it may be a fascinating technical challenge, but sometimes the best thing we can do is say, no, I'm not going to automate that one. Maybe even sometimes lose a small amount of business to gain a larger bit by moving into the new developing systems, because there's other systems, services that we can then bring in to bear on those, for example, performance testing. Time to market. Yep, we need to be able to show that the tools are quick, that they're agile, that we can sit down and quickly code something, that we can show that automation is something that can be done in days, not months. If we have to build a VM, take it with us on a laptop, then let's do that. Let's prepare simple scripts that we can take with us when we go and visit a client. Well, here's your website, here's a few tests I knocked up on the train, on the plane, on the motorway service station while I was waiting to visit you. Something that actually shows a direct interaction with them, something that can help their time to market in a way that they can understand. Complexity is always going to be there, but life is complex. A good meal is complex flavors. A good film, say The Usual Suspects, a personal favorite, has a complex plot. Complexity is not necessarily a bad thing. The automation solutions can be complex, but complexity isn't evil. It isn't good. It's just complex. If their system's simple, the automation should be simple. If their infrastructure is complex, then that's going to reflect in what we do from an automation point of view. And it's not about broken promises. People can say that, but really, we've been delivering for over 25 years on automation. We've all got success stories that we can share. We've all got examples that we can pull out where automation has made the difference between success and failure for a project. And ask them, well, have I broken a promise to you? No. Has this tool? No. This is something from the past. Ask about your development practices 25 years ago. They probably weren't very good either. That's nothing to do with automation. And I still actually want to stick with the end message about automation is dead, because in a way, I think it is. Automation is no longer a niche topic. It's no longer a niche skill. Automation is everywhere in every approach that we're engaging with these days. Automation of processes, robotic process automation, automation of your APIs, automation of the microservices, automation of onboarding, of reviewing documents. Everything has an automation component now. Automation may no longer be seen as quite the niche area because everyone's expected to understand it, be able to demonstrate it. It doesn't always require high-end tools like a QTP or a UFT or a load runner or anything like that. What it does require is the mindset to understand automation, of being able to break things down into small chunks that we can follow. In fact, we've got lots of people trained to do that. They're called functional testers because that's what they did with the scripts. They broke them down into chunks. And there's the tools out there that allow them to migrate into that space and take the lessons there. And if we have to change the term from automation to something that's less scary for people, let's consider that. And that's really all I wanted to talk about today, which is automation, and it's probably my favorite subject. Now, we do have a question and answer segment for this. Deepika, I can't actually see anything with my screen at the moment. So are there any questions you could share with me, please?
Mm, Uh, so I request all the attendees to please share any queries through the chat and Q&A sections to Andrew. So let's just give a couple of few minutes for the attendees to post the queries, Andrew.
That's absolutely fine. So in the meantime, I could do some singing, and anyone who's ever heard me sing will realize that's more of a threat than a good thing to hear. So if you want to avoid me doing a really bad version of Roxanne by the Police, please send the questions in. What I have hoped to achieve today is just to get you to think about some of the negative messaging that we sometimes get back when we talk to people about automation, because it is everywhere. It's not specialist. Yes, it's very easy for them to be negative, but let's change those negatives and actually accept them and say, no, that's a positive. Don't be defensive about automation. Be positive. Be proactive about it. Take the message to people that it does save time. It does save money in the long term if it's properly advised. But you need good advisors, and that's what Sogeti have been doing for many years. We're coming up to 52 years now. In the organization, there's an awful lot of the very best practice of automation, when to automate, and also when not to automate, which is sometimes the hardest thing to do, but sometimes also the very best thing that you can do for a customer, is to say that in this particular case, automation wouldn't save you money, wouldn't save you time. You'd be better off doing it manually. You're only going to do it once or twice. However, what about this case? Have you thought about this one? Here's one that you can save a lot of time on, can reduce the complexity of what's delivered. Don't just say, no, we can't do it. Give them something else we can do.
Right. We have a question from Alistair who says, is there a change in automation due to the digital?
I think there is. I think there's been a big change because as we've gone into digital, and it's a term that confuses me because I've always been using ones and zeros in computing, and we have been since really about the 1940s, that, yeah, the tools are changing. The acceptance of tools in an organization, I think, is wider, but pure automation of just what was functional testing, of what was manual testing, isn't as efficient as it could be. There's a lot more model-based testing coming into there, a lot more modeling to build efficient flows through systems and not just converting what has been done manually. And I think that's probably a positive thing to take away. We realize now that just converting a manual test into an automation test isn't always a good thing. Stop, think, is this the right thing to automate? Can I reduce the complexity? Can I make use of a framework? I don't need to go out and write a framework from scratch. I can actually go and download one. There's always the robot framework. If you're stuck, just go out there, download it. It's got some of the keywords you already need to get started. You don't have to invent every single time. So thank you very much for the question, Alistair. I hope that answers it. Have we any others to pick, or can we let people go back to their day lives?
We have one more query from Rajesh who asks, how does RPA impact traditional automation?
It's a very good question, that actually. I'm seeing tools like Blue Prism, UiPath, starting to put features in that look much more like functional automation. At the same time, we're seeing Micro Focus, Eggplant, and other people putting in features that look much more like process automation. And I think in the next 2 years, the tool sets are going to be pretty much the same. They may be sold differently, but the capabilities of one tool in one space will be very similar to another tool in the RPA space. Already seeing it with a tool called Eggplant, which we use in the UK a lot, where they could actually sell it as an RPA tool. It would work very well in that space with its agents and being able to do manual human interactions, copy and pasting data, but they're selling it as a functional automation tool. They're selling it as a tool to support AI and model-based testing. CA, before they became Broadcom, were going down a similar sort of path, and I suspect that IBM and the other players are doing so. We've seen for Selenium the return of the click and playback function, something that the Selenium developers were absolutely adamant would never come back. And I think that's because they're trying to put in some more features that are easier to sort of sell into a RPA type world where it's process based. And a process is no different to a functional test. A functional test is testing a process at the end of the day of the business. It's just one is used to prove it works, one is used to show that it's actually just working. So the tools will do the same. I think that's going to be the big change.
Right. Thanks for answering that. We have one more query from Carlos who asks, you have told about value versus cost. Can you please give some more example about positive effect on the value, even if cost for a particular organization was quite high?
I can do so. I mean, the value is your website is up and running when your competitor isn't. I had a project before I joined Sogeti where we did a brilliant job of doing all of the automation we could have done. In fact, this is one where we should have done less automation because we could have gone to market faster and we would have beaten a competitor and had a significant commercial advantage that would probably lasted several years. Instead, they launched in the same week. And the value to us as an organization was we should have been first, but we did too much automation. And I know that sounds slightly strange on a call about automation, but sometimes enough is enough. Maybe 80% of what you wanted gives you most of the benefit, gives you 95% of the benefit. You get the example of being able to book your ticket successfully. You cut down on the number of iterations that you have to do. You put out a new change and you do small changes in an incremental fashion, that seems to be more acceptable to people. If you completely redevelop your application, the desktop systems they use, the website, that's disruptive. People want to go back to what they were doing beforehand. But by having the value of being able to make small changes frequently with lower risk, you can slowly migrate people to a new world, a new feature set with less risk. So that's a good piece of value there. You're able to do it with less disruption, and you're able to listen fast. The whole principle of agile really is supported in what we do with automation. Small changes, MVPs, get them in there. A/B testing is a great one that we can call out. We can support the A/B testing. Many things. I could probably talk about it for hours and hours, Carlos. So if you ever get a situation where you've got a nice juicy customer who wants some consultancy on that, give me a call. I'm sure I can do you a good deal. And that, I hope, Topeka, is it. And we can let people go back to their lives.
I personally have a query too
Oh, okay.
on this. So So, with the recent emerging technologies like AI, blockchain, or machine learning, or even IoT, so how do you see this being affected to the automation testing?
I can give three examples of AIs that are moving into that space now. There's Eggplant AI, which will use a model-based approach to run your code snippets based on what the system looks like and focus in on areas that have defects and start making its own choices of automation. There's a company called DiffBlue who can automatically generate all of the unit tests just by analyzing the code base that the developers have built in a legacy system. And the third one is cognitive QA, our own solution into this particular space, where we're able to make not just descriptive reports, not even prescriptive actions of what we should do, but predictive actions on what to automate, when to execute them, and when not to execute them. I think sometimes the best test is one you never have to run. It's a test that you've analyzed it and you've worked out that for this code change, it doesn't need this test. That code change can go in because you have enough information captured from lots of other automatic sources to make an informed choice that the risk is acceptable. And that's, zero touch testing is going to be one of the things that's going to come out of automation, of the merger of RPA, of AI, of functional automation, of the growth of API testing. All of those things are going to merge together. And we're already seeing that most of the products will do some bits of it, but ultimately they'll merge into something that will do everything that we would consider to be separate disciplines now into one all-encompassing technical testing discipline, which might not even be called testing, may not be called automation. What the name will be, I don't know. But I'm looking forward to finding out what it is. I think we're in interesting times. I think we're in good times. The pace of change is amazing. And there'll be something coming out in 6 months, 3 months, 2 weeks that we don't expect that will change everything again. We'll live, we'll learn, we'll go back to the hundreds of tools. Here's a new innovation. Here's a new idea. Here's a new approach that we can put into it. So I think it's a fascinating time. I hope that answers it, Topeka.
Yeah, yes, it did. So, I guess we don't have any more queries then. So,
Well,
th-
thank you everyone for attending. Thank you very much for the questions. And I look forward to listening to the next webinar. Do we know what it is yet, Topeka?
yeah, we have one upcoming this Friday on Acidity Labs rebranding.
Excellent. I look forward to that one. In the meantime, everybody, thank you again. Have a very good week and be safe out there.
Yeah, thanks a lot, all the attendees who joined us, and special thanks to Andrew who took time for this and taking through this interesting webinar. Thanks, Andrew, for your time.
Thank you so much as well. Bye bye, all.
Yeah, bye bye.